The story begins in a convenience store where two people, Jody and Kevin, walk in. After sharing a quick kiss, they suddenly pull a gun on the cashier and demand the money from the register. The cashier obeys, and Kevin grabs the cash before rushing outside to wait for Jody. Jody then notices a safe beside the counter and orders the cashier to open it. The cashier calmly warns her that she won't like what's inside, but Jody refuses to listen. Growing furious, she begins to count down, until a loud gunshot echoes through the air. The story then moves to a dense forest, where a woman named Samantha is seen wandering, looking frightened and desperate. In the distance, she spots a small cabin and hurries toward it, hoping to find some help. Inside, the place seems abandoned. She notices an old dusty radio, a creaky chair, a worn-out bed, and a bag with some food inside. Just as she reaches for it, Samantha catches sight of a man approaching the cabin, holding an axe. Panicked, she quickly hides under the bed. The man steps in, grabs the bag of food, and walks out, unaware of her presence. Relieved, Samantha slips out of her hiding spot and bolts from the cabin. But as she runs, she accidentally collides with the same man outside, falling to the ground and hurting her leg. Instead of attacking her, the man, whose name is Tom, surprisingly shows concern and offers to help. He takes her back to the cabin and carefully tends to her injury. Samantha apologizes for trying to take his food, admitting she hasn't eaten since yesterday. She explains that her car broke down the night before, and her husband left to get gas but never returned. Samantha asks Tom if he has a phone, but he tells her he doesn't, just an old radio in the cabin that no longer works. He explains that he's also stuck here after his car broke down, and he's already been stranded in the woods for 3 days. Hearing this, Samantha panics and insists she needs to find her husband right away. But Tom warns her that the temperature at night can drop to -5 degrees, and it wouldn't be safe to wander out in the dark. They decide to check her car together. Tom looks it over and discovers the problem. It's completely out of fuel. When Samantha asks about his car, he admits it was wrecked after a minor accident. Before leaving, Samantha writes a note for her husband, Adam, in case he comes back to the vehicle. They grab a few blankets and return to the cabin. While walking back to the cabin, Samantha asks Tom if there's a bathroom nearby, but he tells her there isn't one in the woods. A moment later, Samantha stops walking and vomits by the side of the path. Later, Tom offers her some water he collected from a nearby creek, but strangely, when he went back, he couldn't find the stream again. Curious, he asks why her husband would leave her alone in the car, and Samantha explains it's because she's pregnant. Hearing this, Tom insists she take the bed while he sleeps on the floor, assuring her he'll find a way to get them out of the woods. That night, Samantha drifts into a nightmare, calling out for someone as she writhes in pain. When Samantha wakes up, she notices Tom is gone. Stepping outside, she's startled to find a blonde woman lying unconscious on the ground. Samantha quickly drags her inside the cabin. Meanwhile, Tom is seen siphoning gasoline from his wrecked car, planning to use it for Samantha's vehicle. Before long, the blonde woman comes to, and it turns out she's Jody, the same woman from the opening convenience store scene. Disoriented and defensive, Jody demands to know where Kevin is. Samantha, confused, has no idea who she's talking about. Frustrated, Jody storms out of the cabin. Not long after, the sound of distant gunfire echoes through the forest. The sudden noise startles Tom, causing him to spill all the gasoline he had collected. Another gunshot follows, and Tom shouts out to see if anyone is there, but gets no reply. Eventually, Jody returns to the cabin, irritated that there's no phone or bathroom. Assuming Samantha lives here like some kind of hermit, Jody mocks the situation. Samantha explains she doesn't live here at all. She and her husband had simply run out of fuel and ended up stranded. Just then, Tom comes back and is surprised to see someone new. Jody introduces herself, and when Tom asks what happened to her, she says she's from Detroit. She explains she got into a fight with her boyfriend, and in anger, he kicked her out of the car and left her on the street. Tom tells Jody she can stay at the cabin, but warns her that starting tomorrow, she'll need to pull her weight. She agrees without argument. That night, Jody drifts into a disturbing nightmare. She dreams of being tied down and injected with something. The following morning, Jody and Samantha share a light conversation, trying to get to know each other. But things quickly sour when they argue about where they are. Jody is convinced they're in Wisconsin, while Samantha insists they're in New Hampshire. Meanwhile, Tom heads deep into the woods, marking trees along the way to track how far he's traveled. But to his shock, after walking straight for a long stretch, he ends up right back at the cabin where he started. He runs into Jody, who insists Samantha must be losing her mind for thinking they're in New Hampshire. This rattles Tom, and he hurries back to confront Samantha. When the three regroup, they begin debating about their whereabouts. The argument escalates when Tom suddenly claims they're actually in South Dakota. The discovery leaves all of them shaken, each one absolutely certain of their own location, yet completely unable to explain why their memories don't match. Later, Tom warns the girls that their supplies are running low, and if they don't make a move soon, they'll be in serious trouble without enough food or water. He suggests that the next day, they set out together and walk as far as they can. Samantha and Jody reluctantly agree. That night, Tom falls asleep and has a troubling nightmare, this time involving a gun. The following morning, the three of them leave the cabin and begin trekking through the endless forest. Along the way, Samantha and Jody chat, and Jody admits she never knew her mother. She explains that her mom died the day she was born, and she was raised by her grandparents. A little later, Jody suddenly stumbles and falls, and as she hits the ground, a wad of cash slips out of her pocket. Shocked, Tom demands to know why she's carrying so much money. Jody brushes it off, claiming she got it while working with her boyfriend. While this is happening, Samantha notices something unusual: a locked door hidden in the ground. Tom quickly smashes the lock open with his axe, and the three of them climb down to discover a military bomb shelter. Inside, they find shelves stacked with canned food, bottles of vintage wine, and even a map. But when Samantha inspects the supplies more closely, she realizes everything is written in German. She immediately suspects that they're not even in America at all, but in Poland. Jody asks how she can be so sure, and Samantha explains that her father was German, and even though he died in the war, her mother had taught her the language. Jody is stunned by the coincidence, and quietly admits that her own father also died during the war. The group gathers up the food and drinks from the bunker and sets off again, thinking they've finally made progress. But before long, they're stunned to find themselves standing right back at the same cabin. Despite walking in what they believed was a straight line, and covering a good distance, they've somehow circled back. That night over dinner, Tom opens up for the first time. He admits that if he disappeared, nobody would even notice. He explains that his mother was executed and that he grew up in a South Dakota orphanage. Later, while Tom is away, Samantha asks Jody if she can see the bundle of money she's carrying, admitting she's never seen that much cash before. Jody pulls it out and confesses that she and her boyfriend rob gas stations and supermarkets to get by. Samantha is shocked, but Jody defends herself, saying she had nothing growing up, never went to college, and stealing is the only way she knows to survive. As Samantha looks closer at the money, she suddenly laughs in disbelief. It's dated 1984, which hasn't even happened yet. Confused, Jody asks what year Samantha thinks it is, and Samantha replies, 1962. Jody is floored, and when Samantha presses her, Jody points to her jacket, revealing that she's from 1984. Just then, Tom walks back into the cabin, and when the women ask him the same question, he shocks them both by saying it's 2011. Each of them is stunned, realizing they're all from different times. Tom, however, suspects they're just playing some kind of twisted joke. Before they can argue further, a gunshot suddenly cracks through the night air outside, leaving all three frozen in terror. Tom glances outside and spots a man armed with a rifle. Hoping for help, the group cautiously steps out, but instead of assisting them, the stranger raises his weapon and begins speaking in German. Tom quickly drops his axe to show he isn't a threat, and Samantha tries to explain that they mean no harm. But before they can reason with him, the German soldier knocks Tom unconscious. The next morning, Tom wakes to find his hands and feet bound. He looks around and sees that Samantha and Jody are also tied to chairs inside the cabin, while the German soldier is nowhere to be found. Piecing together the strange clues, the vintage wine, the old radio, the bunker, they begin to suspect the impossible. They may have somehow traveled back to World War II, which would explain the bomb shelter. Samantha even asks Tom if time travel existed in his year, 2011, and whether he could have brought them here. Tom shakes his head, insisting that while 2011 may be more advanced than her time, It's nowhere near that level of technology. Moments later, the German soldier returns. He unties Tom only to shove him violently outside. Unable to communicate, the man drags Tom into the woods and begins beating him. Tom tries to fight back and eventually breaks free, sprinting into the trees. But the escape doesn't last long. The German soldier catches up, overpowers him, and ties him tightly to a tree. The German soldier storms back into the cabin, his face twisted with anger as he demands to know where the women really come from. His eyes suddenly lock onto the necklace hanging around Jody's neck, and he furiously demands to know how she got it. Samantha quickly translates, explaining that the locket once belonged to Jody's mother. But the man refuses to believe her and points his gun at them. In a desperate attempt to calm him, Samantha reveals that she carries a locket just like it. This revelation shocks the soldier. He slowly reaches into his pocket and pulls out his own locket. Inside is a photo of a woman. To everyone's shock, Samantha recognizes her instantly. It's her mother. Later, the soldier marches the two women out to where Tom is being held. Samantha quickly asks Tom if he has a locket like theirs, but he doesn't. Surprisingly, Tom has already managed to free himself from his ropes. The scene then shifts back inside the cabin. The German soldier is now the one tied up, unconscious, while the three stand nearby in fear and confusion. Samantha finally admits the truth. The woman in the locket is her mother. But Jody counters, saying that same woman is actually her grandmother. Things only get stranger when Samantha mentions her father's name, Hans Neumann. After searching through the soldier's documents, they realize the man is, in fact, Hans Neumann himself. And when Samantha asks Jody for her birthday, Jody replies, November 11th, 1962. The very same date that Samantha's unborn child is due. Samantha then carefully asks if Jody's father was Adam Cohen, and if it was his parents who raised her. Jody quietly confirms, and the room falls into a heavy silence as the devastating truth hits. Samantha realizes she is actually Jody's mother. The thought that her husband is destined to die in the war shatters her, and in tears, she rushes out of the cabin. As the tension lingers, Tom delivers a shocking revelation of his own, claiming that Jody is, in fact, his mother. Jody instantly dismisses it, arguing that he doesn't even have a locket and she isn't pregnant. But Tom insists, saying he once did have the locket but left it behind. He goes on to confess a dark truth, that his mother lived a life of crime, robbing gas stations, killing a cashier, and even murdering his father, Kevin. Her actions led to her capture, trial, and eventual execution. The cruel weight of his words crushes Jody, and she storms out after Samantha. In the woods, the two women face the grim reality together. Samantha breaks down upon learning she won't survive childbirth, while Jody reveals the fate of Adam, that he died fighting in the Vietnam War, leaving her to be raised by his parents. Worse, she admits her grandparents were abusive, showing Samantha the scars that prove her suffering. Heartbroken, Samantha embraces the truth of her daughter's pain. Later, Samantha approaches the German man, Hans, and tells him everything. As she moves to untie him, Tom urgently warns her that Hans could be dangerous. But Samantha drops yet another revelation, telling Tom that she is actually his daughter. She begs him to trust her, and after a tense pause, he finally agrees. But the moment he's untied, Hans snatches his pistol and rifle, then bolts out of the cabin, leaving them stunned. At this point, Samantha recalls the nightmare that's been haunting her and finally opens up to Jody and Tom about it. In her dream, she was going into labor at home, completely alone, while Adam was away overseas. The ambulance never arrived in time, and she died giving birth. Tom then admits he also had a disturbing dream. He confronted the priest who had abused him, shot him, and then turned the gun on himself. Jody follows by sharing hers, a dream where she was executed for killing Kevin. Slowly, they realize the truth. All three of them had visions of their own deaths. But Tom argues that none of this has actually happened yet, which means there's still a chance to change their fates. They connect the dots and realize everything begins with Hans's death. If they can prevent that, maybe they can break the cycle. The group heads to the bomb shelter to study the map, and Samantha reveals a painful truth. Her father died in an airstrike at Wilen, Poland, and chillingly, they are standing in the very same place, on the exact day he died. Tom begins piecing things together. If Hans survives the attack, his wife won't remarry. That means Samantha's mother will still be around to help during childbirth, giving Samantha a chance to live. If Samantha lives, Jody can be raised to have a better life instead of falling into crime, and Tom can finally grow up with his real mother. With that realization, they decide their only option is to protect Hans. The plan is to move him into the bomb shelter before the airstrike hits. When they return to the cabin, they find Hans has already managed to make contact through the radio. They desperately try to warn Hans about the incoming airstrike, but he refuses to listen, insisting that his mission must come first. Ignoring their pleas, he storms outside. Tom rushes after him, and the two clash in a violent struggle, until Jody gets caught in the chaos and ends up gravely injured. Seeing her condition, Hans flees, leaving Tom and Samantha scrambling to save her. Tom panics, realizing that if Jody dies, he'll never be born. Determined, he chases after Hans, while Samantha stays behind, doing everything she can to keep her daughter alive. After a relentless pursuit, Tom finally catches up, only to be attacked again. The two fight brutally, but once more Hans slips away. That's when Tom realizes the awful truth. No matter where they run, the forest always leads back to the cabin. When they return, Jody is on the edge of death. Hans opens fire on Tom, but in that moment Tom's body starts to fade. Within seconds, he vanishes completely, erased from existence as Jody takes her final breath. Samantha, heartbroken and enraged, lashes out at Hans, blaming him for everything. But before she can grieve, the roar of planes fills the sky. With no time to waste, Samantha begs her father to trust her, not just to save himself, but to protect their family's future. Finally convinced, Hans agrees. But just as they make a run for the shelter, the bombs begin to fall. In the chaos, an explosion knocks Samantha to the ground, slamming her head against a rock as she blacks out. Fortunately, Samantha's father manages to drag her into the bomb shelter and lock the door just before the missiles hit. Explosions shake the ground as Hans notices Samantha's form flickering in and out of existence, until she suddenly vanishes. Outside, Jody's lifeless body also fades away right in front of the cabin. Hans stares at a photograph of his wife, but before he can process it, a massive missile slams into the cabin, obliterating everything. Then, time itself begins to rewind, undoing every event in reverse. The story jumps to 1985, back to the opening scene at the store. But this time, Jody looks completely different, refined and elegant, nothing like her rebellious punk self from before. After buying her groceries, she steps outside and notices Kevin, now with a different girlfriend. The couple enters the store, and just like before, they pull out a gun and demand cash from the terrified clerk. The scene unfolds exactly as it once did. The cashier hands over the money, but when pressed to open the safe, he warns the woman she won't be able to handle what's inside. A gunshot rings out. The scene then shifts to Jody's new life. She now resides in a luxurious home. A newspaper headline reveals the passing of Hans Newman. Jody soon meets her mother, an older Samantha, and together they walk along the shore to scatter Hans's ashes. The film closes on a bittersweet note. Tom never comes to exist in this timeline, as Jody and her old boyfriend's fates have split into completely different paths. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this mysterious story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more mind-bending movie recaps.